Hello everyone. I think I got it fixed now. I think I fixed it. So yeah. Let's go. We are so back. Nice. Now don't get me wrong, I don't mind the microphone on the PlayStation controller, but I think I like the one on the Razer one a little bit more, at least from a talking standpoint. It just seems to go a little bit smoother. And it seems easier to talk. I can lean back and stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to get to work. As usual, I'm having multiple things playing in the background at once. I have lo-fi, I have intelligent stuff, I have scary stuff playing. Well, maybe not scary stuff. Actually, yeah, I do with queso and other reactionary channels, and I have something, let's see, what's the other one? Oh yeah, react to stuff. But yeah, I did this. I was doing this in the stream before, in stream 10, and I really like the aesthetics of these games. So yeah. So you know what I should do now though is that one day I want to play the game Baroque on the PlayStation 1. It looks fun and I like the aesthetics. Again, I do. Alright. And it was, so the problem was I actually had when I went to the control panel for the Razer, I actually had to unmute, and then I just had to unmute it, and then it came, and then it worked, and so I kind of am pretty proud because I had to do it on my own, but it's pretty good. Good job on it. Okay. Maybe I should talk in a space. I've talked in the Twitter space one time, but It was more like a private one. I might have to. Or maybe the list. What list? Oh. So there's like a list there? Should I just start listening now? Okay, I'll just, maybe I will. But it's not going to be, there is a way to, there's a way you can listen in, there's a way to listen in without, the Twitter Spaces without actually going into it. Oh, that's not what I wanted. See, I didn't even know he was gonna do that. Dude, if you didn't kill me right there, then I think I would have, if I were you, I probably would have just put the controller down. But then again, this game is, it is a cross-platform play. There's no way I should be doing this good. Well, yeah, and I see the proximity effect is a lot more forgiving here. That doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it... It's like, these guys are not moving. I do like this one a lot too. Don't worry, I will go back to... I'll go back to the... I'll go back to 1080p later. Unless, if there's a way I can figure out how to get it to 1080p without lagging, I would gladly do that. Nice. Oh, come on. I should have had him. I should have done more, kind of. Why isn't that like these people are like not dying though? Yeah, I'm not even playing that good. think about it. Alright, well, they got over there, so. Yeah, the tables have turned, but 720p is like, it's the lowest I'm willing to go. Well, I guess I could talk maybe about like different stuff, power scaling a little. Irrelevant characters are, in my opinion, stronger than out-of-verso characters because irrelevant characters are just, they're basically above math, they're above the tiering system. They are, I think, depending on how you argue it, they could be like metafictional characters, kind of like God Fusion Goku, because God Fusion Goku at Highball would just be a metafictional character because he sees fiction as fiction, and he was able to shake the chairs in her life. Our chairs, which is to me one of the best feats of all time by a pseudo-fictional character. He was able to fuse with the audience, but if you take that as almost type of literal, then God Fusion Goku would be stronger, one of the strongest characters ever, because he would then see fiction as fiction, and if you don't put him at, you don't use the highball where he sees fiction as fiction, obviously God Fusion Goku isn't real. But he's as close to real as any character I think can get from a fictional standpoint. But I still don't think he is omnipotent, because I don't think there can be an omnipotent character in like any fiction, due to the amount of fictional characters that can be applied and used. And so I think trying to say that a character is like omnipotent, I think is nonsensical, and it doesn't work. And so people I don't think it works the way people think it does. Okay, well, what else was I going to, what was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, characters that are irrelevant are above the tiering system, and I think there is an argument to be made that they scale to almost metafictional characters like God Fusion Goku, and I think to me it would go like this. If I had to put it like this, I would go out of verso, then it would go out of verso, then it would go boundless. The reason why I put boundless above out of verso is because out of verso can be scaled by math, but boundless can't. But even if you can't scale something without math in a physical sense, I think you can, because there's the fact that you could argue that there's different layers into boundless. To me, it just means that it still doesn't get to the irrelevant tier, because the irrelevant tier, you start to go into theoretical territory, you start to use math that can't even be like classified as like real math. You have to almost kind of make up your own math system, but you're still using the concept of math, even if the math is just very extreme. But if someone wants to say that a boundless character is the same as an irrelevant character, to me, I think it's fine. I think another thing is, who would win between a boundless character and a irrelevant character? And I think the thing is that a boundless character would be at the same. It would be at the same tier. Because if you, for example, if you take two boundless characters, they're both boundless. You can't really use math. They're above the math tiering system unless you use your own kind of math. But I think that's sketchy. But to make a long story short, if you want to put two boundless characters against each other, I think you have to go with the one with the bigger cosmology. But the one with the bigger cosmology wins, because otherwise it's hard to quantify which character can actually beat which character, but because I think irrelevant, boundless, and extraversal metafictional might both be of the same tier, like all three of the same tier. But I think irrelevant characters and metafictional characters are closer together, because with boundless characters you can still put them at a tier that's you can still put them at a tier that's they can still be put in a tier that's they can still be put on a tier that's actually that can actually do multiple layers into it. And I think if you can do multiple layers into boundless, kind of like multiple layers of infinity, well, that kind of it sort of breaks the a little bit power dynamic, at least for me. It's kind of like, you have two 3D characters, they both can destroy an infinite universe, right? Well, if you have two characters that are, they're both like 3D, they can both destroy a, 3D, infinite size 3D universe. Well, how do you know which character could win? They're both universal, at the very least. They both can destroy the, universe in one attack. The infinite universe. So how do you tell who wins if they have the same level of basically durability and AP and stuff? And it's like, well, I think you have to go into skills, you have to go into cosmology, because let's say a universe like so they're both like infinite, like they're both infinite universes, but you can have two infinite sized realms be infinite in size, but not all infinities are created equal. You could go with the Aleph Null thing, and then you can just say, well, they both can destroy the universe, but the infinite universe doesn't have to be of the same, like, size. It can just be infinite in structure. So like an infinite square versus an infinite an infinite square versus a infinite 3D cube. They're both infinite inside. They're both technically infinite, but one is greater infinity than the other one. And so somebody wants to say that but then again, I was talking about 3D universes. So even if you went with that argument that they're both infinite, they're both 3D infinite, and so it's kind of hard to put a 2D universe. It depends on, but then again, a 2D person could just say that they could just say that a 2D infinite universe is still just 2D. So I would just go based on who wins is the cosmological argument. Now, how would I be able to say who would win between two infinite 3D characters? They're both infinite 3D. They both have the same AP, they have the same feats. And I would say that the one who wins, because you could have the same durability and same AP as somebody else, but they might not be of the same speed. So let's say, for example, I, as a regular human, if I had a 3D like everything except speed, and the other person has the same durability and the same level of, if they have the same level of power as I do, but they're much faster, it's very possible that they could just speed blitz me and do a, infinite punch. Because an infinite punch takes infinite energy to do. So even if you have durability as good as the universe, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, because durability does scale to power in many ways. You could just say that the one who is much faster wins, because he's just be able to speed blitz you. And there's nothing you can do about it either. So yeah, I would put it in that category. That's how I would do. Now, if they were truly of the same specs, like same everything, you're going against basically your twin, well then I think it would have to me, it would have to come down to skill. It would have to come down to skill, and it would have to come down to other factors too. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying that it's for certain, but like let's say they had equal stats. You're going against your twin who's every bit as good as you. And then I think a lot of it just comes down to creativity, and I think you can beat your equal. Even if you are equal, you can still beat them. For example, if Michael Jordan went against another version of Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan would win. But would the real version win, or would the fake version win? Because it's very possible that the real version can win, even if the clone has all of your attributes and mental state and everything, all of your abilities, because you could shoot the exact same shots and just simply miss. And so you could say randomness plays a key and skill plays a key. In fact, that's probably what separates people. You can have all the same attributes and abilities and still lose to the same exact person due to various reasons. But that doesn't mean there can't be a winner. It just means you have to take into more variables. More variables means it's much harder to I think, to get a grasp on. But that doesn't mean it cannot happen. But that's what I think about that. Well, as for who's the greatest character in all of fiction, the strongest, that's kind of hard. My own character. My own character is the greatest character in fiction. My own character. My own character is the greatest in fiction. I'm not doing so. I don't think I'm gonna do so good right now. Yeah, I'm not doing so hot. At least not now. That was cool. Eek. I should have died right there though. Kinda should have. Another gun. Alright. That's cool. I've never done that before. Yeah, I see why now. Because they know where to go. Map knowledge is, and FPS games do matter a lot. I'm getting my butt handed to me. Thankfully, I'm actually getting carried this game, but yeah, that's kind of what I would do. About, like, that's how I would say it. I do sometimes use the wiki, but I think sometimes there's bias there that they still appeal to consensus, and because people don't always agree with the interpretation. For example, the Sukuna thing, like, for example, one of my favorite characters, Sukuna, he's got a sword that cuts through all of existence, all of reality, right? Or at least that's what it says. Now, you could say that he's universal because he has a slash that cuts all of reality. It did bisected a big character in Jujutsu Kaisen, and so, I mean, how would you, if you showed someone and argued with someone and said, I have a slash that cuts all of reality, all of existence, and I can use it against some other people. It's like, there's no reason to say that Sukuna's world's cutting slash can't actually cut all of existence. Now, I don't think it can, but you could argue with, and it's kind of argue against because there's not a lot of debunks against it. So it's like, how do you argue against something like the Sukuna slash that says, well, this slash can cut through anything and everything. It's a slash that cuts the world, or because the word can mean many things. In Japanese, the word world can mean Sekai, society, the universe, existence, reality. And there's no reason to say that somebody who isn't 4D wouldn't be able to cut through it. It's like, how do you know that a Sukuna isn't universal? You could argue that he's not universal because he went down to characters like Yuji, for example, and he almost lost to Gojo. But the thing is that he scales to people that have cut the perfect sphere. So he scales higher than Maharaga. Maharaga was able to cut a perfect sphere, which has a perfect sphere has infinite points. In reality, you could just say, well, that infinite sphere is universal because it has infinite points. Do I think Sukuna is universal? Yeah, probably not. In fact, you can make an argument he's not only universal, you can make an argument also that he has basically infinite speed or above, because he's able to match Gojo's speed, and Gojo's speed was able to move in a realm of 0 time. Yeah, I really read it, and some people read it. Some people say that Sukuna is like 4D because of exactly what I talked about earlier, which is he has a slash that can cut the world, or he has a slash that can cut existence. That's pretty dang powerful, I think. If you really think about it, that's pretty strong. I mean, you have a slash that can cut the world, and that's not overpowered. It's pretty dang overpowered to me. Pretty dang overpowered. It's pretty dang overpowered. Well, I don't know how you did that. Oh. Yeah, I was going to meet my maker. Shut up. I'm getting kind of bored though. I kind of want to... I might have to play switched and never went to nights too. Like, I'm having fun, and I do like the speediness. I do kind of wish it had the stats thing a little, like the stats, kind of like the first one, but porcupines. Alright, let's go. Okay. But yeah, I think but I think what's going on here, I think what's going on here, so what was I talking about? Oh yeah, but yeah, a lot of people think that Sukunas can be like 4D now. In fact, you could probably scale them higher because you could just say that all of existence can just mean all of existence as in all dimensions. And you could just say that that token, that Sukuna could just be one of the strongest characters if you take it hyper literally. But that's not just highballing, that's wank, because you're just saying, I'm just granting that all of existence could just mean all of existence. That includes the other dimensions I said earlier. There's no reason why I can't say that either. There's no reason I can't say that all of dimensions can't mean, like all of reality can't mean all of dimensions, because it's a slash that cuts the world, or reality. It's a slash that cuts the world or reality, and nobody can really argue against it. Well, I think you can. I think it's wank if you put him like that, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. In fact, I think it's even more wonderful that I think he could. I think you could argue for that, but then I think you run into problems, because you could just say, oh, well, that doesn't mean all the dimensions either, and because dimensions are in reality, is he like Autoverso? Is his word slash like in Autoverso slash? I don't know. I certainly think he might have a better chance than Saitama, maybe. Though, I think with something with infinite void, you could say Saitama reached the universal at that point. So, Saitama, infinite void, universal, due to beating infinite void, someone who was able to go outside of the universe and know what is slash. However, I don't think it's higher dimensional, because I think if you were a higher dimensional being, you wouldn't be able to interact with it. A 3D version of you can't interact with a lower dimensional being. Like, so you either need to put in an avatar or get a representation or something else, because the plane of existence is just too high. You know, if it's so easy why don't you like just step into why not just step into reality and why not just why not just you know why not just go into reality then, or into the reality of the fictional universe? That's because fiction still requires real life to be a thing in the first place. Yes, they exist. They're just as real as you, as humans and real people. But the difference is that the big difference is that that a 3D character is still even not the same as a 3D character like real life. For example, a 3D like real life's always going to be able to beat fiction, even if you get to the metafictional stuff, because fiction requires real life to even exist. Even if you want to take it, at its lowest highest interpretation, because you still need fiction to do something, to be something, to do something, and to you still need fiction. Real life. Fiction needs real life to do something, to be something. And I think that's a big conundrum that a lot of people don't understand, is that you can't, any fictional character, even a representation, 3D representation of yourself, because you can use higher dimensions, from math and stuff. String theory is another one. I think our universe might be a higher dimension, or maybe even a lot more than we could ever imagine, because technically everything after Universal is kind of in make-believe territory, because we can't even know what we can't even know what's outside of the universe, or if there is one, or if what if all the higher dimensions all contained within the 3D reality? Well, then that would make the universe a higher structure. And so I think it depends on what people mean. So when people say reality, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to know what they mean, and well, what else should I play then? Hey, let's do. Well, let's do. I don't know. But as I'm thinking of what game I want to play, I've been. Okay, Left 4 Dead 2, I guess, is it. So I've been. So that's what I think about the power scaling. You could just say that Sakuna is a 4D. Sakuna, I think, scales above Yuki. Um, yeah, but yeah, there's the word slash. If you take it hyper literally, saying it can cut existence, Sakuna might be 4D, might even be higher because existence can mean different things with different context. Reality could be anything from the regular universe to reality as in reality like that's higher than a dimensions. That's kind of insane if you think about it. Kind of insane. I love power scaling. I've been doing it since like 2012, maybe if not even further. I would always argue, but it was very low tier. I would just argue and say, hey, Bugs Bunny could be Goku because of Toon Force, and because Toon Force can do anything, Bugs Bunny would win. Obviously, I don't think that's the case anymore, but at the time, that's what I was thinking. And it's kind of hard to argue against. It's kind of hard to argue against. And so to talk about Left 4 Dead 2 a little bit. For the campaigns, I don't play anything but realism versus. I mean realism, not realism versus, but realism expert. Because the other campaigns, because the other difficulties are just too easy. Given my bots, the mods, it's too easy on the other campaigns. You can still go down, but it's a lot harder. But I make the AI enemy way tougher, and they already are way tougher in expert realism. But even that doesn't compare to the bots that I have. I have it to where I have 7 other survivors with me. It makes it a lot. It makes it very difficult to go down. So that's it. What's the other one? Play realism. Yeah, the other ones are just too. The other ones are just too hard. I mean, too easy. They're just too easy. So that's why I make the enemy way better though. I make the AI. Because unlike the expert realism, the other one, like, even, like, if you know what you're doing, it's not too hard. But the issue is the custom campaigns. The custom campaigns are significantly harder just because they make it to where it's very difficult for someone to... Wait, why am I starting with this? But yeah, they make it very difficult. Alright, let's, yeah, but it makes it very difficult, if not impossible. It makes it very difficult, if not impossible, as I can say. So yeah, there's 8 of us here. But it makes it very difficult to beat because custom campaigns are also good they spawn multiple teams, multiple rotates, crescendo events, hordes that basically spawn forever. And there's just a lot more. The reason why custom campaigns and expert realism are hard to deal with is because basically they're not balanced. It's hard, but not in a good way. It's hard because the tank wasn't meant to be spammed. Neither was the witch, neither was the hedge, neither was the crescendo events, neither was really anything like any overpowered scenario. Not saying that they can't be fun or challenging, but there is such a thing as too much going on, and you take too much damage. There's friendly fire. It's a lot worse without mods. Custom campaign on expert realism is really not. It's not meant to be played. I only do it because I have overpowered bots, and the bots aimbot are very hard to take down. They can go down, you can get a game over, but you basically have to be very strong and very fast before they have the ability to recover. It's very difficult to take down the bots that I have, but it's also very difficult to argue. It's very difficult to argue. It's very difficult to argue against it because the custom campaigns, as I said before, are not built with. They're just not built with stability in mind. They're built with basically how do we screw the player over every chance we get. So that is why these are not meant to, they're just not meant to be that. It's just not meant to, just not meant to go down that way. It's also very difficult because it's also very difficult as I said before, the reason why this is so difficult too is that, and as you can see, I went down quite easily. It's depending on what weapons you have too, because if you don't have the right weapons, that could screw your game over. But yeah, I play on, but expert realism is not too bad on the other expert realism, it's not too bad. It's not too bad on regular campaigns, or even probably the Left 4 Dead 2 campaigns. But expert realism is very tough, if not probably impossible on the custom campaigns, especially if you don't have everything set up right. I also put a lot of horror mods on it to make this game scarier. I put graphics mods on the game to make the game look a lot better. I put mods that, as I said before, make the AI much better for both sides. So the reason why I don't feel bad about using these bots is because I play on expert realism all the time now. That's all I ever play. Yes, the bots are overpowered, but as I said before, there is a caveat. For one, expert realism on the custom campaigns, those are meant to not be played on expert realism because of the imbalance. However, I also want to, what other people don't understand is that I made the AI much better too. I made the AI much better. I made it a lot more health. Even than the default ones, they're much faster. The hordes have a lot more health. The tank especially is hard. There's even higher difficulties than expert realism anyway. I just can't get it to work because whenever I tried to, the game would like freeze and crash. It's unfortunate because I would just go to the highest one straight out of the gate if I could. But expert realism is the best we have, unless I can find a way to fix it. And so, yeah. Alright. I wonder if I should use my, well, let's just use it now. I was gonna say I was gonna use my wait, what was it called? I was gonna use my adrenaline shot, and I did. Cool, they have a sniper. Don't know if I'm gonna use it though. Yeah, you know what, actually. Yeah, let's use it. I like Left 4 Dead 2 again so much also. I like the gameplay. I can't stop playing it for some reason. But it's basically time wrestling. I like how simple it is to learn. I like how even on a GTX 1650, which is not really a modern card, it's not even an RTX, you can still get ray tracing on it. You can still get stuff like shaders, ray tracing, and stuff like that. But this is because it's the ray tracing is built into the shaders, it's built into the mods, and this game isn't very hard to run. It's a game that's came out, it's a very old game, and so it's not the most difficult game. But yeah, but it's not very, I think it's a good compromise. It's a good compromise that I found. I play on expert realism. I play on the highest difficulty. I play with bots that basically have aimbot, and then I just play with much harder AI to compensate it. So basically, I play on the highest difficulty. Both sides have pretty good AI. Pretty good AI, and I don't feel bad about it. You know, they have just as much help as I do, and I think it's just fine. Okay, so it's the I was gonna say it's at the lowest brightness. I like playing it lower than usual, but that's because I think it sets the atmosphere a little bit more, and I think it's good better for the atmosphere. There is another mod collection, I think it's called Nightmare, that basically makes the game a lot like Cry of Fear. I haven't downloaded it, but I might have to try it though, because it's literally Cry of Fear if you put it into the It's basically Cry of Fear if you put it into I just changed some of that home. But it's basically it's basically what Cry of Fear would be. You put in the Left 4 Dead 2 engine and you basically remastered it. And I do like Cry of Fear. It is a good game. Probably one of the best. It's got one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. I just think that Left 4 Dead 2 is better. It runs way better. Cry of Fear is actually just a Half-Life 2 mod, which is Half-Life is a mod of Team Fortress 2 of Counter-Strike. And yeah, I think I wonder. I used to play a game called Pax Nora. I wonder if I should play that. Or if I should, maybe I should just talk about it now. I said I was probably going to talk about stuff like politics, religion. As I've said before many times, I'm an LDS, emo man, brown. The reason why I think that is I stay in it because I think it's the most consistent. I think it's the most consistent one. But I think that it can answer questions that no one's going to put to and it can't in a way that makes sense for other people. So you could say, why would God create us if He was all powerful and create us if we don't really have a choice and everything and stuff. Because you could just say, well, we love you, lot of people don't accept it, and you can say, well, God's evil for doing that, but then you could just ask Marvel, so how do you judge evil if it's all subjective, relative, and arbitrary? Or you can just use that against people and say God's evil to say, well, how do you, what is evil except a person, except for a preference you have, because technically there is no action that is better or worse than anything else, especially more of a just subjective, especially for a finite person. Can't really say that what God is doing is objectively bad, even something that's extended, even if somebody opposed to themselves or their own, or to their own, like making or something. One could just technically say that one could just say that typically, one could just say that typically God is just the foundation, but then it doesn't really go anywhere, because people do, if you use something like God, if you use something like, well, God is, God is evil for creating his, God is evil for creating its own creation, and then just sending them to hell. The issue is, again, there is no way to know what objective evil actually is of a person, and it just seems like that it's just special, like pleading or something. It's just a preference, as I said before. There's no reason to even say that it's objectively evil, because even if you appeal to internally, something like Gnosticism that says that either you are gods or that God can't be known. I would just have to say is that how would you be able to know what God it's raining outside. I would just say that how would you be able to know what God is evil if we can't even have a standard of what evil is, other than to what something preference is. It's just a preference. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a preference that people have. People have preferences, and then therefore you're correct, because it's all preference. It's not even a compelling argument, because it's still just dealing with the idea that preferences are just that, preferences. I don't understand why people have to not understand it, because saying that, oh well, everything is just a preference you have. just a preference you have. Doesn't really mean anything. Also, there really is no justification for why something is better or worse than the other thing, other than what someone feels. Other than what someone feels is what. Other than what someone feels is, what someone feels is, it's not even evil. And if they're going to say, well, that's bad, we shouldn't violate someone's autonomy, or that sense data it's bad because of sense data, that's still just a point of finite mind that can't actually determine that. Even if you determine what something is, it doesn't tell us what we should be doing. And it's just insane to me how the same people, they want an objective, basically, they want an objective standpoint while appealing to reality, but without appealing to an objective moral standpoint that can't actually mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at this point. Like, it doesn't matter to me, basically nothing. And I don't understand why people don't want to admit that without objective morality, without a God who can give us, you could argue for both pragmatism and morality, all you have is pragmatism, and even that pragmatism doesn't really mean much of anything because there's no morality behind the pragmatism. So, for example, a lot of people say that humans is just about surviving, it's about living, and it's about humans flourishing. But then you ask them, why is that ultimately objectively good? Why can't people just want to, why not just have all humans die? Because then you stop the suffering. There's no more suffering to be had. People will stop suffering. We don't exist to suffer. It's pragmatic. It works. It's fast. Why don't people just want to die? Why is human flourishing better ultimately than dying? If we're going to die anyway, why not just go now? And then people say we can just build our own standards. But first, understand that what people don't understand is that the reason why they can even say that in the first place is because somebody wanted to get to them. They still abide by Christian ethics and the ethics of Jesus, even if they themselves are not a Jesus follower, believer. Why? Because Jesus is the best standards. He's the best God. He's the best human. There is no higher standard than Jesus. It is why people keep getting compared to him, because he's better than them. Jesus is a better player. Jesus is a better player. I don't know why we could just jump down there. But Jesus is a better person. He's actually better player than everybody else in terms of the game of life. And as I said before, people really don't know. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with the fact that I am personally in some critique, they still fall for it because in their worldview, there is no better or worse. There just is. It doesn't mean anything. And trying to say, well, this is better than that, this is better than that, this is better than this. Okay, tell me how 2 plus 2 equal always being 4 tells me why you shouldn't murder people. You can't do it. 2 plus 2 always being 4 does not mean much of anything. It doesn't mean much. 2 plus 2 always being 4 doesn't mean anything, because even if something is logically consistent and pragmatic, it doesn't give you to justification, it doesn't give you to morality, and yes, right or not, ought or no. You ought to, for example, brush your teeth because it's you probably don't want your teeth to get cavities or rot or do anything. But that's a pragmatic ought. It's not a moral ought. There's also an ought to you ought to do something because you just want to. For example, if a candy bar is melting, I probably ought to eat it because it's going to melt in the car, right? Or in the sun, or wherever you have it. It's going to melt. And so that's another ought. It's like you ought to do it. You ought to eat it. You ought to eat it. The candy bar. But you could also say you ought to eat it because you think it tastes good. I ought to eat this candy bar because I think it tastes good. And so there's 3 different levels of oughts. There's pragmatic oughts, as in you ought to brush your teeth. There's moral oughts, as in we ought to not murder or make life worse for anybody else. And then we ought to do something because I ought to do it because I want to. So I think that can be an ought to where you ought to because you want to do the ought, but I still think that it's still playing with kind of semantics, because most people, when they say we ought to do something, it's probably a moral ought. We ought to live because da-da-da. Okay, well, that's fine. But then the issue is not even just ought, it's simply justification. Why should we do anything? Because if you're just going to say, well, it makes me feel good and it makes for a better society. Well, why is order and a better society ultimately better for anything? What is better from that standpoint? Well, you could say, well, it works. Okay, all humans dying works too. All humans dying works too. In fact, if everybody died, it would be better for everybody because there's no more suffering at that point. So, when people say, we ought to do something, I don't understand what it means. In fact, there's a lot of societies that are, many which people would say unjust, but they still work just fine from that, vantage point. And I just don't understand why people don't want to admit that there could be the case that I didn't mean that. But yeah, I think that a lot of people, ultimately what it comes down to is self-righteous hypocrisy, and that people employ it in their own worldview, even if you grant it. For example, let's just say Christianity is not true, Jesus is not God, even though he has a lot of historical backing. Even non-believers believe that he was. There isn't just it's not just non-believers. Josephus, Tacitus, Only the Younger, the Pontius Pilate order, and a lot of other stuff that basically come to its existence. Basically, Jesus is God in Scripture. So there's a lot that people would have to deny that Jesus was a real person at all. You could say that Jesus was not God or not divine or whatever, but there was someone named, like, almost basically 100% certain that Jesus Christ did exist. So there was somebody named Jesus probably did exist. But as I said, whether you think he's the Son of God or not, that's a different story. But I think that even with skeptical people, it's very hard to argue against. But even if you, for example, even if you say that Jesus Christ, was not God, is not God, he was human. And that if you're basically a cultural Christian, like somebody like Richard Dawkins, you could argue that Christianity is still more pragmatic and still more helpful even to non-believers because it gave them a standard to abide by how you should treat other people. A lot of people say, well, that's just the golden rule, but the golden rule came a lot after the Ten Commandments. And the golden rule it's a lot more vague, because if you can be vague with rules, you can basically almost fall into the equivocation, and at that point, you can make any word mean different things to shift. I mean, words can have different meanings, but in this case, it's basically saying that words can only have one meaning, and it could depend on a whole bunch of factors. So I don't think that it's a bad thing. I think that people just need to people just need to get over it. The reason why Christianity is bad, because from a pragmatic standpoint, it works, even if it's not, even if you granted it that it's not necessarily not true or real, because even something that's false can be not true either. But that doesn't make it, valid. Let's do melee combat, Widow. The monkey king. Well, these people are going to be the zombie army. But yeah, as I said before, Christianity is more pragmatic. Alright, I'm gonna turn this down a little. Let's turn this down. Alright, that's better. See what I mean? Look how many zombies are here. Well, technically this isn't a custom campaign, it's just Coldstream. But Coldstream is the hardest campaign I've heard. Alright, let's go to the helicopter.
Rambling, tumbling, basically not giving any kind of coherent answer at all, but still somehow imagining that.
Alright, I'll send him the cock pilot.
And where he say, if I could get to a point of
there's a tank down there. Alright, see ya.
You're not ever going to get the givenness of objects without assuming that there's objects in there to cause you to present that givenness to you, which is the very thing that's in question, that's unjustified. You're never going to get that on that paradigm. It's just something you have to assume.
But yeah, as I was saying before, people who have no justification for anything, they lose the plot. They can't really argue against anything that they think. There simply is no way to. There's no way to tell.
I am going to be doing, you will be doing.
There's no way. If you're a determined actor, then that had no choice into coming here or being here. That means in some sense that you have to be determined, and you only have free will based on the nature of your being. Meaning, your nature limits you, even if your imagination doesn't. It's the same thing with people who worship like politics or the past. They think that the past was always better when it had its many problems, as with the future. But people reminisce, that they romanticize the past. Ancient Greeks and ancient Rome is done with this a lot. People think that it's better, but they don't realize that the quality of life probably wasn't as good for the modern person. You're probably going to be a slave or die somehow a lot sooner than you'd like.
We're going to be
There wasn't
focusing
modern
on
medicine.
driving wants from this
There
and
was a lot of
notion
things that
getting
it just didn't
productivity,
have.
right?
It's the same
And how
thing
that
with
doesn't work, what he's trying to do.
it's the
But there's
same
other
it's the same
arenas that we
it's
could
the
go
same
down, right? We
thing
could
with
think other things. We could go in the direction of saying that
it's
he
the same
is
it's the same thing.
claiming that there's facts in the external world.
It's the same thing
What does it
with
mean to say that there's facts in an external world?
really
So
anything.
I don't think he's even aware of them.
It's the same thing with
that kind of sentence. We could go
it's
into talking
it's
about
the same
causal
thing
relations that
with
are
ancient Rome, and
that
it's the
there's a
same
knower
thing with
who know
ancient
a
Greece.
meaningful fact, that there's an
People
external world,
romanticize the
facts
past,
that
but as
have
I've said
identity over
before,
time, as
probably
existing
wasn't as
objects,
good as they think.
other objects, that there is
It's
a
the same thing with
space-time realm by
the
which you
pagan
derive facts.
days or the Viking
Proposition,
days.
there are facts,
The
has
Vikings, a
meaning,
lot
that
of people
language
don't
and
know.
symbol has meaning.
They did
Meaning
pillage
exists
each
in
other
time.
a
Meaning
lot.
can be from one mind to another mind. All of those things, which have not been
And so
demonstrated,
a
are
lot of people
assumed
think
in a
that
single sentence.
a lot of people
Now,
they
this guy
think
doesn't
that
know that, and that's the point.
because
He's oblivious.
they think that you know, they believe in ancient that the ancient days had no problems, but they do and did, much like every group has good and bad people. A lot of them had their own problems, and I think people need to get over the fact that they didn't.
And they all go together.
They did have their own problems,
Wouldn't have concepts
and I don't think they would want to even live
knowledge without
in a place that they think. There's
an atheist material.
I just don't think they
Causation.
are as good as people think, and I think that people need to really understand it. They really need to understand it. It's the same with ancient Greece. Ancient Greece had much of the same problem. They were smart, but I don't. The quality of life wasn't, on average, what it is today. Even if people don't want to admit it, it's true. And I think it's kind of hard to. It's hard to deny it. It's hard to deny it. And so that's what I think.
And yet then suddenly we're told how we're going to be let's listen. And everybody's always saying,
But
how can we attack something?
yeah, when it comes to religion or how they justify something, most people will I don't think will be able to. They'll appeal to something like feelings, but then they won't give an actual reason why. Even if they use metaphysical properties, for example, a person who thinks that they use metaphysical stuff and processes. They use stuff like concepts which you can't actually put under a microscope. You can't actually prove it. And then they also use stuff like you can't prove stuff, at least not in the same way. But they still use it. They're kind of undercutting themselves by doing that. they want to not believe in the metaphysical, but then they use the metaphysical, like their mind, consciousness. They can't, they can't exactly understand it either, but they say they know they have it, but then they don't realize that everything that goes into their mind could just be kind of like biologically determined, and that means that they're not actually choosing, they just think that they're choosing. So they're not actually choosing as much as they think, and if they're not choosing, if everything that comes into their mind is not even them doing it, and then I would say that means that a lot of what they say can't actually be proven. A lot of things cannot be proven in the way that they think they can. I don't know. I think that I think that people get, they think that they know or think that it would be good more than they actually probably do. Because whenever they're pushed into a corner, there's just nowhere else that they can go. They appeal to emotions, and the appealing to emotion is just it's fallacious. There's no justification. There's no even consistency, because they're still appealing to their own preference. And because human minds are not universal, especially humans, it just goes to show that it's very difficult for people to not be self-righteous hypocrites. It's very difficult for people to argue a moralistic standpoint by simply something working, because then you just say that all humans dying works, and they don't like that, but they kind of have to bite the bullet, because unless they can give justification for why they believe what they believe in a non-biased way, they're stuck in the same boat as everyone else. And all you have to do, especially if you're an orthodox person, you could just approach a tag and its reliability of its consistency. So if something is consistent with itself, there's no reason also to say why something is worse or better than truly something else. And I've said before, and I'll keep saying it, but there's just no way that people can constantly say, hey, we have the ability to do stuff that you can't but we're all here doing the same stuff. So it kind of sounds like you are. It's why when people talk to like Andrew Wilson and Jay Dyer and they try to debate them, for example, they always basically lose on even the opening starting point. because they're just appealing to their own relativity, which means that everybody else can appeal to their own relativity too, and there's no way to say for certain what is or isn't evil. They can't even say that their own mind is them doing it. You can't know that if they can't know that they even exist. All reality in their minds could just be an illusion, aka Buddhism. But that's why I think Buddhism doesn't really work either, because again, there isn't a justification in Buddhism. You're just locked in a cycle, and even if you break the cycle and go to nirvana, you're still stuck in a cycle of nirvana, because you're still not God, which means you don't have the abilities to actually really do what you want. Like, the ultimate freedom and free will is having the ability to do what you want when you want, knowing that you can do it. It's having the ability to do something is what free will is. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with it.
You're about to embark on the greatest adventure in human history, a mission to Mars, and you're doing it in style.
So that's my take on that. But going back to kind of the politics, and I do have an argument against tag, even though I think tag is very powerful. I just would say that, for one, how in some way is it not determinism now I'm not saying that it's a bad thing if God did it. I'm just saying that if God created us without a choice, knowing what we would do, because to me it's not the all knowledge that kind of leans into deterministic territory. What leans into determinism, for me anyway, is that determinism, what determinism for me is that what's determinism, I guess, for me, from a God standpoint, is that God created you and created you from nothing, with no ability to choose to become human. Now maybe it's not determinism in the way people think, because because God can just create secondary causes with free will. That doesn't mean he's a part of it. Then there's different types of causation, not just it's not just it's not just the ability to the ability to do something. It's the ability to know something. The ability to do something, I would say, is a greater level. I haven't played this in a while. It's a greater ability than oh yeah.
survival supplies, and likely the building blocks of the first human outpost on Mars. This means very careful planning, but it also provides a little room for error, because on a journey like this, a lot can go wrong.
It's a lot like the PlayStation.
Starship crew
I'm playing Pop Nora. It's fun, I think.
long-distance space travel until now.
Okay, so there's action points. Okay. Well, what should I do now? Oh yeah, I think that's in turn now. What was the other one?
While the Starship is the most advanced ship ever designed, it's been far from flawless, with several early unmanned rockets failing to launch successfully and costing untold millions of dollars. That is far better than the alternative if they were manned. The loss of the Challenger and Columbia space shuttles devastated the NASA space program, the deaths of the astronauts cascaded future planned missions, and leading SpaceX to step in. If anything goes wrong with the manned Starship, it will be the same fate.
Oh yeah, so going back to what I said before.
To allow them to watch movies and TV series while in transit. But there's one thing they won't be doing: watching the latest episodes of the infographic show. Internet access in deep space is a true challenge. All signals need to come from somewhere. Most astronaut communications will happen through closed circuits. While the International Space Station has Wi-Fi, it's limited to operation. That means
Yeah, it's been a while since I kind of forgot about this. I think that even if, okay, so let's go back to the stuff kind of I have with the tag argument. Well, it's not the tag argument itself that I have the problem with. It's just that saying that something is a constant justification for something, I don't think really means much of anything.
Astronauts actually wear diapers for launches because you can't take a break while shooting off into space. The ships are thankfully equipped with advanced technology for bathroom breaks today, but that doesn't mean it's always comfortable. Astronauts use a vacuum hose for number one and a vacuum toilet for number two. Starship will be equipped with a multi-purpose toilet that lets astronauts take care of their business in one go if needed, without having to use two different devices. The ship will have other advantages that NASA ships did.
Let's just have to chill now. But yeah, I think Christians, they kind of don't know what they're talking about sometimes. Well, non-believers there. makes sense. Alright. Yeah, I was gonna say before is that I think I'm the trial.
There's no doubt that when the first crew returns from Mars, they'll also be the most famous people on Earth. Just like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were after Apollo 11. We see you, Michael Collins, but fame comes with its own challenges. NASA and SpaceX will be waiting with an army of medical and psychological experts ready to run a battery of tests before the astronauts meet the public and
Ranked
face
play,
the
huh?
frenzy ahead. Because being in space that long can affect the body in all sorts of ways. Past astronauts have reported a significant decrease in bone density and trouble adjusting to Earth's gravity at first after
There's
returning.
like not a lot of
This is a much
games,
longer trip
but
than
it's not very
anyone's ever
popular
experienced.
anymore.
Starship is prepared to compensate for this,
Perhaps
but
it
no one
was,
can be sure
but
exactly how the
it's
body
not
will
now.
react to a trip of this length. The only thing that is for sure is that the astronauts will be entering a brave new world, one that is very different from the world they
Oh,
left.
that's cool. You can make your own deck.
Whether they like it or not. And it all started when they set foot on the world's largest spaceship. What part of life aboard Starship do you think will be the biggest
I
challenge?
do like Poxmora though.
Isolation or something else entirely? And if given the chance,
Kind of
would you
like
take
its
a one-way trip to
simplicity.
Mars? Let us know in the comments.
But
Want to know
yeah,
what the astronauts could be searching for deep under the Martian soil? Check out
as I was saying
Mars was
before,
once inhabited by humans. Or watch how humanity will actually colonize Mars in 5
it's
years. Or a speculative look at just how big this
people,
project could get if the mission works out.
they just don't argue consistently, and when they get caught, they either have to double down on it or they eventually have to concede begrudgingly because they don't want to admit that their position, like many others, including mine, has lots of holes and can be exploited. There's just no way it can be consistent. There's no consistency. But it's also with politics and politicians, as I've said before. The reason why this is so devastating. The reason why this is so devastating is that, the historic stuff I don't have to say, but the political stuff I'll get to, and I'll probably be my last point for this stream. Because they say, like, they'll say Trump can save America, whatever that means. They'll say they don't worship Trump, they just think he's the Messiah. But the issue is that by saying that you think Trump can save America, you're basically almost implying positing that he can save it. It's like he can't. Trump can't save America, no politician can, because I don't think people even know what saving America means. So I think they would have to get more specific on what it means to save America. Because save America can mean different things to different people. You can't save people from themselves because people have free will. So they can't be saved. I guess you could try to force them, force doctrine to act how you want them to, or you can just either give them incentives to do something, or you can threaten them, but then it's like they're not doing it from their own free will, and you basically have to coerce them into doing something. They didn't want to blackmail them. And I just think that it's not going to, I think that is I basically think it means that they're not being consistent either. So when people say, I don't worship Trump, they're not saying that in a way. They're not saying that in a way that they think. They're saying they don't worship Trump, he's not God to them. But then they say that he's the chosen one. He's the chosen one by God. He was chosen. Jesus Christ, is my God, and Trump is my president. And they say that God chose Jesus, and God the Father chose Jesus. He didn't choose Trump. And then they'll just gaslight themselves. They'll say stuff like, he's not backing bad people, even if he has connections to Epstein. And it seems like he still doesn't want to release the list whenever he's talked about the list from other people or talked against the list. He deflects to saying, look at what the Democrats did. Even though they're not in power anymore, at least from a presidential standpoint, and Trump can just release the list. And even if he's not on the list, that doesn't mean he's not collaborating with others who were. And he is not consistent with himself, and when Trump fanatics are pushed into a corner because of this, they don't know how to handle it. It's cognitive dissonance, at least that's what I'm seeing. And it's just not a good argument against him. And so it's just not sane. It's not a good argument. There is no reason to why Trump. There's no reason why Trump can't. There's no reason why Trump can't actually just release the list. There's no reason why people that are for Trump can't actually be consistent. And I don't know why either. I truly don't. Maybe he could. Maybe he could be more consistent. But clearly I don't think that's going to be the case. That's not going to be the case as far as I'm concerned. So they're not consistent. It's the same thing with people who aren't Hitler fanatics. Many on the alt-right think Hitler is the Great White Hope. They think that Hitler is some like God magical like genie Great White Hope, when for one, he actually probably wasn't fully white himself. He had non-white people in his army, in his group. He had a lot of diseases, which is weird because a lot of his devoted followers basically worshipers and idolizers. Not saying I hate Hitler, because believe it or not, I don't hate him, but I don't think he was exactly as good or consistent. He had non-black or non-white people in his group in the military. For some reason, people say he was totally against Jews when he made a pact with Jews called the Havara Agreement. And the Havara Agreement was that the Havara Agreement was basically where he would just send Jews to Palestine, which helped create the new Israel, which a lot of people don't want to get into that either. And that's very strange because when you bring it up, they just bring up Mein Kampf. So we have conflicting reports, but he did do that. His leadership also, he made mistakes in the war that cost him the war. So I guess he must not be as great of a god as many white people think, considering he made mistakes. He did drugs. He actually had a lot of health problems. He wasn't consistent. He had non-white people in the army, which I don't think it means he hated necessarily other races, because he shook a black person's hand. I think it was something Owens, maybe Terry Owens or something. I don't know, but there was some black guy that got, I think, first place in the Olympics as a runner or something. And he shook his hand. And the black guy said Hitler never ducked him or snubbed him. So I don't think he does, but that is something to bring up and note. And the other thing that a lot of people are not, a lot of Hitler fans do not like it when you bring it up is that when you bring up something like Hitler and how he not only was not consistent, the way people think, he was not consistent in the way that I think people thought, and I think that many people, the biggest cherry on top for Hitler fans is that he killed Polish people and he sterilized a lot of German people. These people were full on white, and here's why him and the Nazis did it. They did it because if you had a disability in any way that would stifle his career or creativity, they'd probably just kill you because it'd probably be a bad look for them. In other words, Hitler was not consistent with that either, and people want to say that he was when he wasn't, and he wasn't because ultimately I think he did care about his own people, but this careness only went so far because he only cared about you even if you were white, if you were useful. Heck, he wasn't, I don't know if even if he was voted in, there's probably some corruption going on there. There's probably a lot of corruption, and I don't know what else to think. I mean, when you point this out, they'll call you the N-word, which I am. I don't care. I just care if they stay on topic. But they really can't. It's just cognitive dissonance. And that's ultimately what it is at the end of the day. it's cognitive dissonance, and it's people being just self-righteous hypocrites who have cognitive dissonance and are not consistent. And that's all you need to say, and for them to probably admit deep down that what they're saying and doing is not consistent, because it's not consistent with the beliefs that they actually have. Because if it was, they would look into it more and just say, hey, there is a lot of stuff that is not consistent with everything else that I'm saying or I believe. So why is that the case? So why is that the case? I have no idea. But there needs to be something done, because if they don't, otherwise they're going to fall into the same holes and same traps over and over again, and these people they won't know how to get out of it. They'll just continue to deny reality, even if you can have good points and still admit that the leadership is flawed. For example, I think Joseph Smith is a prophet of God. I'm an LDS Black Latter-day Saints, and I probably always will, because I think it makes the most logical sense. However, that doesn't mean I always have to agree with the interpretation of Joseph Smith or the leaders. I don't think that needs to be the case. I don't think that has to be the case. It's okay to have your own interpretation of stuff. Bye-bye, bear. But I think it's okay if there's just a level of degrees of separation. You can believe fervently, you can have your own beliefs, you can even agree with some of what some people think and say, and you can still not fully agree and point out to where they're consistent with their own beliefs. That's okay to admit that you don't fully agree with the leadership or the person you worship. Now, I think the thing also is, like, people disagreed with Jesus too, and you can do that. You can do that. But the difference between disagreeing with Jesus and everybody else is that Jesus knows what he's talking about more. He was never wrong. And the reason why disagreeing with Jesus is different than disagreeing with other people is that Jesus was always correct. He's always correct. And I'm not just saying that because, oh, well, look at, he's God, so he can always be correct. No, he was correct about how other people would use their free will. So he's kind of an exception to the rule, because you can disagree with him. It just won't go that well for you. And Jesus, when he was disagreed with, he didn't complain or whine about it. He just accepted that people have free will, and some people are going to disagree with you. That doesn't invalidate or validate your position necessarily. It just means that what you're doing or what you believe is something different, and it's not necessarily the same thing. And that's all it is. And if people want to think that way, if people want to say that you can't actually
Bryson's statement about the history. If Bryson is going to argue that his chief contention is Matthew 5, the Attributes and so forth, this assumes, yes, that Matthew is an authoritative text. But there's nothing in Matthew's gospel that tells us that Matthew, the disciple of Christ, wrote the book.
So if people want to say that,
In fact,
I think that people are just afraid to go against the norm because of how they'll be perceived by their peers. But they also want vindication because they're afraid of being alone. They have the inability to be alone, and they constantly seek validation because either they don't have enough self-worth or it's just materialism, when all you need is yourself and you need Jesus. Why do you need anything else other than yourself and Jesus? Jesus will never betray you. Jesus will never, he'll never betray you. He'll never betray you. He will never go away from you. And I think that,
that Matthew is part of the Bible. So you'll notice this book here is called the Bible. It's made up of many, it's a book of books. But this didn't fall out of heaven into Bryson's lap. It didn't come to him. In fact, it came to him historically. It was transmitted and passed down. Much the same way that the Jews transmitted and passed down not just the written Torah, but also the oral Torah, which Jesus first incites and places. So, yes, my first challenge is that Bryson can cite passages, but I need to know why, on his view, I'm supposed to accept it he has access to or a basis to know that I can. If he's divorced from the church who made the decision to put them together, and he's correct that the early witnesses to the canon precept is African confirmed by Rome. The
well, I
canons
haven't, there's some saves from all the way back from
what we call the Council of Trullo, and it's appended
May
together
29th,
six councils, according to the seventh council,
2022, and that's at level 1. I'm not sure, I don't know if it would even work. I don't know if it would even work.
Protestants don't accept. Why does that matter?
Would it work?
It just simply shows that Protestants of all
Should I try to load an old save file?
they look to the church of history to give them
God.
accurate tradition when it comes to people like
I'm gonna
Papias or
try it.
Irenaeus in regard to citing the gospel. But why does Bryson care what Irenaeus
It's
says?
going to
Bryson
go
doesn't accept anything else
bad.
Irenaeus as a bishop in the Orthodox Church. Why we might cite any other church father that disagrees. So what if one or two church fathers cites this or that gospel? That doesn't tell me which one I'm supposed to follow, especially if it's according to the canons, and there absolutely are. You give multiple lists of canons in the first 6 centuries.
Well, look at this.
Now let's get back to the Bible itself. The Torah
Oh,
was
this
given
is,
to Moses, but in the Torah, disputes are assumed to be
talk about old.
for Israel, and so Moses set down a pattern of how disputes would be solved. This is the elders, this is the high priest, etc., who are put in place to make
Yeah, that's very old.
ultimately.
I don't know if I'm gonna save over it though.
1. This is why we see, for example, the laying on of hands of Joshua in Numbers 7. This laying on of hands and transmission of authority in the Old Testament is precisely what Jesus does as the founder of the true spiritual Israel, the fulfillment of historic Israel in appointing apostles, which he says in Luke 10:16. He who hears you hears me.
Okay.
That means that succession of John 5, especially when we get through John 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
There's no reason why.
His argument against them is that no one saw the Father in the Old Testament. In Exodus, when there was the manifestation of God at Mount Sinai, that was not the Father. He says it was
Okay.
me. Moses wrote about
Let's
me.
go
Moses
into
and Abraham believed in me.
the house, the
So
breeze
he's
zone,
identifying himself with the manifestation.
and then
If you go back to Exodus 3,
okay.
Exodus 20,
Oh, it's my spider.
I will put my name on the mouth of an angel.
Hi, Lydia. What's going on? Lydia. A sweet roll. I want to sleep in a bed. I want to sleep in a bed. Okay. Plus 50% spells, but plus 50% spells, negative 50% spells, but the spell effectiveness will be much greater. So I'll probably none. That's pretty cool. Okay. So this is a good send off, I think. It was fun. I'm glad I got my mic working again, the Razer one, and it was a fun time. I hope people had fun. I hope they had a good time. I like my streams. I didn't used to, but now I do. Remember the ultimate thing, if I had to end it off with a note, it would be this. It is better to be Christ-like, I think, than to believe in Jesus, at least at the start. Just try to be Christ-like, try to get along even if you disagree. It's not a big deal to what people say. It's not a big deal for what people think. It's not a big deal for what they believe. You should care more for what people do. What people do is more important than anything else. And people need to learn to be alone. They have to understand that it's okay to be alone. Try not to get offended. Try not to take things personally if you can. You have to remember that nobody really gets out of life. Even if you have the best life, even if you have a utopia, eventually you're going to run into something. You can't always blame it on an external factor. Like, even if that external factor is a great deal of reason why things are bad, it may not be the ultimate reason. Because if that's the case, then everything you do and everything you think is either determined and ultimately doesn't really matter. So you better make sure that you have at least limited free will. Otherwise, a lot of things are not consistent, and they don't really make much sense from a belief standpoint, because you can justify anything for any reason, even if that justification doesn't have a reason, or people say they don't need one because it's all arbitrary, relative, and it's not even consistent. So even a justification being consistent with itself or being consistent with reality still might not mean that the justification for that consistency still might be limited by a arbitrary, finite being, even if it is consistent all the way through, because something being consistent logically wise, and something being consistently pragmatic wise doesn't always mean that consistency or justification is valid when there's something else that contradicts it with something that's not coherent. And so people, I think, don't know how to get out of their own way in terms of beliefs, in terms of knowledge, epistemology, and a lot of other things. They run into fallacies, and until they can get to grips with they can't know everything, they can't do everything and be everything that they want, and even if they have a utopia that they can't ultimately stop death because life kind of sucks for everyone, until they understand that you need someone like Jesus, who I believe is God, then you're always going to be stuck somewhere with a gap that cannot be filled by just pragmatism. You need both pragmatism and you need the morality. You need logic and you need morality. You need both. You need the ability to appeal to something that can give you both in a deterministic, logical, math, indifferent, dead universe, or reality cannot give that to you, because even if you posit that the universe is God itself, the universe itself, even if it is God, if you say it's God, or that reality is God, or existence is God, that can't give you objective justification, nor can it give you objective morality. And that's ultimately the issue, is because then you try to get an objective reality or objective morality and objectiveness from a human mind. But because they've already agreed that the human mind is finite, then they're kind of actually telling on themselves and basically saying that, yeah, my mind is more finite and not and it's not infinite. It's not universal in understanding all of reality, but I'm going to try to impose my beliefs being correct objectively in a subjective way, and that just doesn't work. It's all appeal to the self. It's all appeal to the self, and there's no other way to say it. People want to appeal to themselves or what they believe is true, without appealing to an objective, pragmatic, moral standard of someone who can argue perhaps for them. And no, I don't think it's special pleading. But anyway, I'm kinda done. I'm tired. I've been streaming for a long time today, and just glad it ended, I think, on a good note. Anyway, I will be back later, I hope. Well, later as in maybe sometime this week. Okay, bye.